Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today I'm going to talk about some of the legal requirements for a contractor within the UK. Of course, I'm not a solicitor. I'm also not an accountant. I'm not registered in any way. So if you're looking for legal advice or accounting advice, go to those individuals. It's really important for you to do that. However, I will share what I think are my insights in relation to some of this stuff. So I want to make that crystal clear. The first thing is business structure. As a contractor, you're typically going to have different types of structures that you hold your business under. Now, typically, if you're working outside of IR35, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you're going to be using a limited company. Okay. Now, in some situations, you may be using a sole trader, but really and truly, that's not standard practice. Now, with having a limited company, of course, that has a professional edge and feel with it, that offers you tax efficiency, and it enables you to do all of these other stuff that a normal business can do when you think about a business. However, of course, there is a bit of a admin burden, and there's all these different things you may need to file in order for you to keep your upkeep when it comes to having a limited company. Now, of course, you don't need to worry about that too tough if you have an accountant doing all of this for you. So this is why I said, make sure that you get an accountant who could do all of this stuff. They can set it up for you. Typically it ranges around £100 for them to do it for you, but you can do it yourself if you want to. I think the fee for setting up a limited company is about £14, £15, whatever it may be, but you can check out gov.uk for more information in relation to setting up a limited company. And of course, you need to be compliant based on HMRC rules and regulations and everything else. But again, I would leave that for your accountant to make sure that they've got that all set up. If you are getting an accountant because you're working outside of IR35 and you have a limited company, it's important for you to get an FCSA approved accountant or accounting agency or firm or whatever it may be. Really, really important stuff. And let me make this distinction. If you're working inside of IR35, then of course, you're going to be working within an umbrella company. In other words, by HMRC standards, okay, based on tax and everything else, it looks like you are working for that umbrella company, when really you're doing services for the end client. So for example, if you're working for, let's say, for example, the NHS, okay, they are your end client. That's what you're delivering the work to, or who you're delivering the work to. But in terms of the people who are processing your payments, dealing with your tax and all that kind of stuff there, it would be the umbrella company. Okay. So the umbrella company is a limited company. So in essence, the umbrella company is almost like an outside of IR35 contractor, so to speak, that has many different contractors who are managing all of their payments and processes as well. So that sort of like gives you some thoughts and thinkings around what you could possibly do in the future if you were to have your own subcontractors, etc., etc. So just so you understand, an umbrella company houses those who work inside of IR35 doing jobs that are similar to those who may be doing a potential permanent 9 to 5, of course. We know it's not always a simple setup like that, but this is for you to understand at least anyway. Taxation is something that you need to think about, of course. There are different types of taxation setups that are applicable to different types of business structures. Of course, some of you may be VAT registered in terms of your company. Now, of course, in order for you to be VAT registered, you have to hit certain thresholds. So for example, I believe it's 85 or 86K, but you can check online. If you're earning over 85 or 86K within the UK, then you have to be VAT registered, okay? You have to be. But if you're earning below that, then if you are VAT registered, you can deregister yourself if need be. Now, of course, you can have voluntary VAT registration, and this is useful if you want to claim back, certain tax or whatever it may be, or appear more credible when you're selling your products or services in order for you to have that image or brand or whatever it may be. So these are some of the benefits. So obviously, it's just not about image gang. It's also about the benefits of claiming that back. So think about whether you need to be VAT registered when it comes to these legal implications. I forgot to mention that if you're working inside of IR35, i.e. HMRC see you as somebody doing works that is similar to somebody who's permanent within an end client organization, then you are subject to income tax, national insurance. And to be clear, it's employee national insurance. And of course, the umbrella company is paying employer national insurance. And of course, there are other things that may come off it, such as salary sacrifice or pensions or some sort of thing that contributes to benefits or whatever it may be. Every single inside of IR35 umbrella company treats their contractors slightly differently. When it comes to outside of IR35 individuals, those who are doing works that are not deemed as typical to a standard permanent employee, then the sort of tax that they're paying is income tax, and they're also paying corporation tax. They will also get dividends if those dividends are claimed depending on different thresholds, etc., etc. You can check out all of the thresholds on gov.uk. They can get very complicated, so you may want to speak to an accountant, or if you want to study it, then feel free to study it. Good luck with trying to calculate it properly. I know some people have done that, but of course it changes depending on what different umbrella company you go to, or different type of setup that you have, or whatever it may be. Of course, when you're working outside of IR35, you are going to have business expenses that you're going to claim back. So it's important to submit those different expenses to your accountant. And also there may be travel expenses and other stuff that you may be able to claim upon agreement via contract when it comes to you working inside of IR35 as well. Next thing is contractual agreements. These are really important because it talks about the scope of works. And this is really the key deliverables, the expected timescales, potentially how much it's going to cost and what that looks like as a unit of time or activity, etc., etc. Who's delivering those works? All of this stuff needs to be abundantly clear. It doesn't matter whether you're working inside of IR35 or outside of IR35. You need to read your contract. Sometimes if you're working inside of IR35, it's a situation where, there's a conversation that happens between the end client and the agency, and sometimes even the umbrella company, and you're missed. Okay, you don't even see the contract. They may show you the contract if this is your first time with this end client in this capacity, let's say, for example, for a specific department or area. But if you're getting extended, etc., etc., they may take that for granted and may not show you the terms and conditions. So it's really important for you to check that stuff. Of course, a lot of contractors have a zero notice sort of like setup where you can leave within 24 hours if need be, based on your own prerogative or their prerogative based on your performance. However, you may want to extend that, okay, if this is an agreement based between you and the end client. So this is something you just need to think about in terms of setting this stuff up. Really, really important stuff. There's also insurance you need to think about, okay? So as a contractor, you need to think about public liability insurance and professional indemnity. Of course, there are other types of insurances that exist, such as IR35 insurance, just to make sure that, let's say, for example, you have gone down a contract that isn't of a certain status of IR35. Let's say they say you're inside, but really you're outside, or it's the other way around. Then you have the insurance to cover you there, here and there, whatever it may be, just in case that's incorrect. But really and truly, as a professional of professional services, you may say something in public that may be wrong or damaging to the organization, or you may give the wrong type of advice privately or whatever it may be, and it may have an effect on that organization, that end client's organization's bottom line or reputation or whatever it may be. You just need to make sure you have that insurance covered. So if you don't have insurance, you may want to check places like Knightsbridge. I believe it's Knightsbridge, where you can get this type of insurance. You can pay on a monthly basis, you can pay on a yearly basis, but it's important to get it, okay? Contractor, business owner, whatever it may be, get the insurance. Of course, when it comes to any sort of environment you're working in, make sure that people are doing things properly. Now, I work within the program management space, so it may be slightly different, but you want to make sure that, when it comes to the end client organization, they've got the right health and safety checks, they've got the right inductions, if that's required for you as an individual, they've got the right sort of trainings, because you want to make sure that, okay, your experience and your trainings when it comes to the past, but when it comes to specific role, there may be specifics that you need to have in place to cover you and protect you. So the basics need to be covered. Now, of course, there's the conduct regulations of 2003, which basically ensures that, contractors need to be treated a certain way if they're working inside of IR35 and or outside of IR35. And it gives individuals the option whether they want to be treated as such, i.e. like an employee, or with those similar rights, okay, so quote unquote, and it's very loose rights, or whether they're going to be treated as somebody who's just doing their own thing. Now, if you're inside of IR35, it makes sense to opt into the conduct regulations of 2003. So this is making sure that your timesheets are signed on time, and this is making sure that you're not discriminated against. And this is not to say if you don't opt in, this stuff can happen, but there is more free reign for stuff to happen because they're treating you like somebody who's just doing their own thing. So there's a balance here. I think it makes sense to opt in when you're working inside of IR35 and opt out when you're outside of IR35, because it just makes sense. There's a weird thing that pops up that you have to choose, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, which one do I choose when you're first starting out this journey? Just opt in for inside of IR35 and opt out for outside of IR35. It's also important to think about disputes and intellectual property and things of that nature. So for example, when it comes to intellectual property, yeah, clients can be quite interesting when it comes to this state or space, because obviously they want to make sure that everything you produce is theirs, okay? And they may have that in their contracts, and if they don't have that explicitly in their contracts, then of course it's yours, so to speak. So you have to be very careful about how you tread when it comes to this stuff. Now, there are going to be some proprietary things that you have developed over the past, and frameworks and methodologies that you have adopted and put into a space and place that makes sense for you, that you can cookie cut it into other places. But just make sure that you're not stealing anyone's IP. It's very, very important that you make sure that you don't do this, because otherwise they could incriminate you against this or take legal action. In addition, when it comes to disputes and everything else, of course you can just up and leave if you want to, but there are situations where you may want to go down this whole legal battle and case where maybe you've been done wrong, and this is where insurance comes into play. But of course, most contractors will never do that because it's long. Okay, it's long to do all of that stuff, especially because these people don't own you. And this is why you're a contractor. So it's less likely that that's going to happen, but you never know when it comes to this stuff. Of course, when it comes to record keeping, you need to comply by GDPR rules and regulations. So make sure you're familiar with that stuff. Don't take any personal information from anyone and keep it on your computers. Don't store it on your computers. Make sure that you're working on the cloud. And you're sticking to certain practices. Just ensure that nothing is dodgy and you're not keeping anything that you shouldn't be keeping. Because if you have kept it for whatever reason, you need to get rid of that stuff, okay? And follow compliance. There are cybersecurity trainings that you can do online via gov.uk if you want to up your levels when it comes to that stuff. And of course, there is things like DBSs, which I kind of find pointless because there's no proof that you haven't done anything after the fact that you've completed the DBS. But this is just basically a way to say that you're not some crazy person who has done some crazy things to some normal people, okay? You have to do all of that stuff before you go into any contract. It's showing that, again, you are compliant and you're a safe person and you're not a bad person, etc., etc. So bear all of this stuff in mind. But ultimately, if you need any legal advice, you need to speak to someone who's a legal professional. It's that simple, okay? This video may give you some thoughts around all of this stuff, but it may not be enough, okay? It may not be enough. So I've spoken about quite a few things here in terms of all the different things I can think of when it comes to myself. But again, you need to go away and speak to the right people or investigate for yourself to understand how you can move forward within your space. Now, I just want to make this point as I'm on the video right now. I've been receiving a lot of messages on LinkedIn in terms of people requiring my help and everything else, which is really nice to see. However, I do not offer contracting coaching. I don't offer that service. I do offer a course that people can take in order for them to know the A to Z's of contracting and how they can get into it. And it's at an affordable price. I'd like to say so, at least anyway. Of course, that's subjective. And you can take it. You can take it and learn from that stuff. If there is anything you need in terms of real coaching, and this is a proper commitment over a number of weeks, then we can sit down and have those conversations. Because again, as a practice performance coach and consultant, again, I can help you with your career and business goals as a leader. If you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers and life management, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.